Did you know there's a version of One Piece where Garp gives Luffy his straw hat? Nami has a completely different name, and one of the villains is literally a wizard straight out of Harry Potter. Yeah, I'm not joking. Before One Piece existed, Oda created 2 prototype versions, both called Romance Dawn. And after reading them, I can confidently say 2 things. First of all, Oda was already cooking. Second, thank God some of these ideas never made it to the final manga. Let's dive into the first ever version of Romance Dawn. We got the first ever color spread by Oda. Forget Luffy decimating the Lord of the Coast, cause here we have the real OG. I noticed some differences right away. Where is Luffy's scar? My brain can't process a Luffy without it. Also, the latest pirate trend in this world seems to be having a bunch of different Jolly Rogers. Luffy's even got 4 on his little dinghy. I'm really glad this was changed in the manga. Imagine having to memorize 4 Jolly Rogers for every crew. Anyway, Luffy sees a big pirate ship in the distance. And then some random villagers let us know that it's Crescent Moon Gyari's ship. Bro, who inspired that facial hair? Nami? Is that you? Oh, my bad, it's Shiruku. Imagine a world where Nami was the swordsman of the crew and Zoro was the navigator. Something tells me they shouldn't switch roles. I'm just gonna call this girl Nami. She's obviously the prototype for her. She wants to fight the pirates, but the other villagers give that a hard pass. Turns out they won't have to, cause Luffy off-screened the entire crew and tied them up. Oda was really off-screening fights on the 8th page he ever created as a mangaka. Have a look at the first real One Piece villain. I only lost because my guard was down. I believe him. I'm gonna start the Crescent Moon Gyari agenda. Who's with me? Just look at the wrath this man commands. Luffy then strolls into town and finds Nami sitting in a shop. And now we get the most important piece of lore. Luffy claims he's gonna be a peace main. You see, back then, Oda's plan was dividing all the pirates into 2 groups. On one hand, you have the Morganeers, violent pillagers that only care about gold and glory. But on the other hand, you have the peace mains that, quote, fight those guys and go on adventure. And that's of course what Luffy wanted to be. I find these groupings kinda silly. It's so blatantly good pirates versus bad pirates. When the story unfolded, we got so many pirates with widely different motivations. If Oda had stuck with these 2 distinct groups, it would have just limited his creativity. I mean, Luffy is technically still a peace main, but the term doesn't need to exist. Cause we all understand that Luffy ain't like most pirates without it. Nami asks Luffy if he doesn't have any treasure at all. A perfect segue into the first version of Luffy's backstory. What did they do to my man Lucky Roo? This version is very condensed, like only a few pages. The bandits are completely missing, but the setup with Shanks is pretty similar. However, instead of being kidnapped by Higuma, Luffy is just out rowing for no apparent reason when a freaking Megalodon attacks him. Shanks still saves him somehow. Why would he even be looking for him if he just went out rowing? Then the final pages are really similar to the canon. Nami's backstory is told as well, but it's completely different. She's the daughter of a pirate that abandoned her. That sounds eerily similar to a certain other Straw Hat's backstory. I knew those puny ropes wouldn't be able to contain Captain Gyari. His elite crew charge against Luffy, but they don't last long. Oda clearly improved a lot as an artist, cause this panel looks very off. The intensely smart villagers then tie up Luffy because they think he was the pirate trying to attack them, which gives Gyari an opening to throw him into the ocean, and more importantly steal his hat. As he's flying to his death, Luffy's more worried about the hat. So yeah, he had his priorities right even back then. Nami thankfully dives in and saves his life, just like her body pillows saved mine. We get this cold panel of Luffy looking at the pirates sailing away, before doing the world famous Gum Gum shoot. Luckily, he lands perfectly on their ship. When you think about it, that's actually such a risky move. If he's off by a single meter, he's sinking like an anchor. Let me tell you, this version of Luffy is cold. He just smashes their ship to bits, leaving them all to drown. He gives all the treasure to the villagers that just tied him up, least the deserving people of all time. Weirdly, Nami stays behind and watches him leave. Makes you wonder if Nami was just supposed to be an early one-off ally at first. Luffy steals their Jolly Roger, so there we have the answer to that. I guess Peace mains were basically supposed to be pirate hunters. We end with a tiny epilogue showing Shanks, oh it's Luffy, as a pirate captain in the future. I've always found it funny that Luffy ages into Shanks when they're not related whatsoever. Will I look like Brad Pitt if I just idolize him enough? You can already see the core of One Piece forming here. The goofy humor, the surprisingly emotional pirate philosophy, Luffy valuing his hat over his own life. Oda clearly already knew what felt important, even though I'm really glad he scrapped some ideas he had here. If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to punch that like button, or else I'm gonna send these guys after you. Let's move on to version 2 of Romance Dawn, which I'm sure more of you have actually heard of, or even seen, because Toei actually animated the whole thing in episode 907 of the anime. We're off to a bad start again. Where's the score? A big bird falls from the sky and lands on Luffy's boat. Now we're talking real One Piece spirit. Suddenly a ship worthy of Don Krieg himself shows up. Nami, is that you? Anne? What the hell kind of name is that? I'm glad he changed her name later. She's even got blue hair here. I knew the Nami and Vivi Yuri was real. They even had a kid together. Anne, who's tied up by the pirates, tell Luffy about the fearsome Captain's six-sided spiel. Speak of the devil, here he comes.
What the hell?
Yeah, One Piece was never gonna have conventional designs. After insulting his head, Luffy and Anne get thrown in a prison cell. Wholesome Anne and Big Bird backstory. Apparently they have a deep connection. Anne feels a lot closer to the actual Nami than Shiruku did. Oda clearly had a better idea of her character at this point. But Luffy once again gives an explanation about the Peace mains and Morganeers, so he still had that to figure out. The more I think about those groupings, the happier I am he scrapped it. Why would Marines even chase Peace mains if their main motivation was stopping pillaging pirates? Now we get to the most interesting part, Luffy's backstory. This time it's nothing like the canon one. First of all, Shanks is replaced by Garp. Yup, you heard me. Garp has a similar personality to in the real manga, but his view on pirates is essentially flipped. He actively encourages Luffy to become a pirate, which just hurts my brain to look at. But Luffy says no, which feels like blasphemy to Luffy's character, but thankfully he was only pretending. Deep down he wanted to, but felt embarrassed to say it since he couldn't swim, which he admits after eating the fruit. Garp's response is to punch him. It's crazy, Oda had Garp in his mind in 1996, but then waited 10 years to introduce him in the real manga. But yeah, I'm glad we got Shanks in the real flashback. Garp's antics makes the emotional aspect land significantly worse here. And I'm also not a big fan of Luffy lying about not wanting to be a pirate. I feel like Luffy almost always speaks the truth, whether it hurts him or not. Back to the present, Luffy refuses to help Anne find her bird, which is also kinda unlike the Luffy we know. But Anne cooks a guard in a sword fight on her own and demands they free her bird. Suddenly one of them freaking explodes. Turns out his own captain did it to him for losing to a girl. Yeah, I'm telling you, Beale ran away from Hogwarts or something, cause he's got several magical powers with no explanation. He tells Anne she can leave and even tosses her the key. Wow, maybe it's not so bad, and he immediately shoots her. Never mind. Luffy then finally arrives with the most important priorities. Food and a boat. Like genuinely, those are good priorities. Spiel asks him where he's headed and Luffy responds by roasting his head shape once again. Real One Piece dialogue has arrived. Spiel then unloads like 30 bullets into Luffy, but they bounce right back. The crew instantly concludes that he's using witchcraft too. You gotta remember, these motherfuckers have never seen a devil fruit before. To them, Luffy's probably the Antichrist. Wizard boy over here then steals Usopp's hammer, but that won't work on Luffy either. Luffy hits him with the world famous Gum Gum backhand. Honestly, the action here already feels way closer to real One Piece than version 1 did. Spiel decides, I'm leaving, and whips out a broomstick. this man is not surviving to the final manga. Just realized that Spiel might be an early prototype for Buggy. I strongly prefer the one we got. He grabs Anne's bird and destroys the ship with his weird fire powers, which means Luffy starts drowning instantly. Even in the prototype versions, Luffy was already needing saving every arc. By the way, Oda seems to have an obsession with pirate captains that hate their own crew. Anne saves Luffy and finally explains why the pirates kidnapped her and Big Bird, whose real name is Balloon. Apparently, he's the last of his species, and his blood has magical properties. They have a nice moment together, with Luffy telling her to never give up on her treasure. Spiel is flying away, celebrating like he won, only to look back and see Luffy riding on Balloon. That's cold. Spiel makes the worst mistake possible by grabbing the hat. Bro should have known that's an instant death sentence. Balloon flies off, leaving Spiel panicking, while Luffy smashes him straight into the afterlife. As they fly back, we get another version of the treasure speech, except this time it's Garp telling Luffy the treasure isn't gold or jewels. And there we have it, the end of Romance Dawn 2. I still think Shanks works way better for this theme. Garp encouraging piracy just feels cursed, but you can still see Oda trying to figure out what One Piece core message should be. That's the coolest part about these prototypes. You're literally watching One Piece evolve in real time. You can see Oda throwing ideas at the wall, keeping the stuff that worked and completely scrapping the stuff that didn't. Some concepts feel totally cursed in hindsight. Like the idea of peace mains or the villain being a full-on wizard without a devil fruit. But then you also get moments that feel so One Piece that it's almost scary. Oda already had the spirit of the series figured out before the actual manga even existed. He improved massively once the real manga started. Reading this feels like finding old recordings of your favorite band before they got famous. He was truly destined for greatness. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think of these prototypes in the comments. And also, I'll bet you'll have the time of your life with this video.